So, hi, I'm Maddie Rippon. I'm a lawyer. My main gig is I'm General Counsel for an organisation called Wayra, which is the open innovation hub of Telefónica, which owns O2 and Virgin Media in the UK. We run accelerator programs and other types of innovation engagements, and we invest in early stage tech businesses. And I do that 3 days a week. And then the remaining time I spend doing freelance in-house lawyering type stuff for a variety of businesses, including the main one being Coatsink, which is a video games company based in Gateshead now, and a handful of others all over the world, actually. And also I work as a business development consultant for Minkoffs, which is the practice that bought my practice 4 years ago. And the reason I'm sitting out in the garden talking to you in February is that I'm in the Bahamas, hence the blue sky and the banana tree in the background. I'm here because I'm a dual national, so I was born here, although you can tell from my accent, I was brought up in England. In Norfolk, to be precise, and so I'm just here dodging the English winter. My perspective is a little bit different because I don't have as long experience of having to deal with bias, being a working woman as most women my age, because I wasn't actually a woman until about 3 years ago. So being trans, I mean, it's something that I'm really only started to experience in the last 3 years or so. I'm very lucky in the work that I do, both in games and in tech, because I work in industries that are very accepting of all comers, basically. But it wasn't always like that, particularly in the legal sector. And I started my transition in 2018, and that was actually my second time around. I originally tried to transition in the early 90s. I'd spent a couple of years working here, and then I came back to England to go to law school, and I reached a point where I couldn't cope with the dysphoria any longer, and so I started the process back then. I didn't go so well for me at that time. I mean, it was much more difficult back then. If you didn't pass, basically, life was much more difficult. And I would pass if I was sitting down, as you guys know. When I stand up, I tend to be taller than all the men in the room, let alone all the women. So, standing just under 6'2", and I was even taller back then. I've lost a couple of inches in height since then. So I found it impossible even to get a holiday job back then, let alone a permanent job. And in the end, various people, a therapist and also my parents, managed to persuade me that I couldn't both have the quality of life that I wanted and also have the identity that I felt that I needed, and I had to choose between the two. And in the end, I went with career and lifestyle, which is not something that really I regretted, because I have 2 beautiful children that came out of that, and I was married for 25 years to an incredible woman, and I had this amazing career, but it was difficult. It was difficult, and I lived in a very grey area for about 8 years, and then my eldest son was born, and I thought, right, I need to put all of this behind me and move on with my life, and focus on being his father. But then by the time we got to 2016, 2017, my business partner left the business. That was very traumatic. My mother died, who I was very close to. I sold my business. I was approaching 50. All of those things were coming up, and particularly the approaching 50 as well, I was like, life is running past me, and I don't feel like I've done the stuff that I wanted to do, and my gender identity was a fundamental part of that. And so it's really, and then I sort of publicly came out in the autumn of 2019, and I found that the whole world had just completely changed. Well, the whole mansplaining thing was something that I obviously had never experienced before. And the first time that happened to me, they'd actually sued this company, and we reached a settlement. And then I was trying to get him to sign a settlement agreement, and then he proceeded to tell me how to go about bringing the proceedings to an end, even though he wasn't a lawyer. And I did kind of want to say, I've been doing this for 25 years. I think I know how it's done. But in the end, I just thought, you know what? I just need to get this done. So I probably did what most women do most of the time, which is to say, oh, thank you. Yes, okay, that's right. Okay, jolly good, we'll do that. Instead of saying, you know, you just mind your own business and I'll mind mine, you know. That was a weird experience for me. The work that I do, I've been doing for such a long time, and I'm so well known for it that people would never normally tell me how to do my job. And that happened, and I said to my very close friend, actually, we've adopted each other as sisters, Deb. I said, so this weird thing happened to me. And she said, oh, welcome to the world of mansplaining. I was like, oh, so that's what it is. And I was always thinking, I don't understand what that concept is. And then it happened again about 2 weeks later. And I had the same reaction. And I came off the call thinking, why did I just sit there and take it? And I had another conversation with Deb, and she said, yeah, but that's what so many of us do all the time. You know, we don't speak up for us. And I was reminded of the character Different with Boys in the Fast Show. And I just thought, I really hope I'm not going to turn into one of those women who just smiles and nods when men speak, and then have a grown-up conversation with the women. You know, so that was an odd thing. And then the other thing that happened to me that I wasn't expecting, that caught me by surprise, was last summer. I was in the early part of the summer, and it was really hot. And I was living in the centre of Newcastle, in a flat. And I walked into town, and I walked into Granger Market, and I was wearing like a vest top and a short skirt, like a summer skirt. And I walked in, and it's an indoor market, and there's lots of reflective surfaces. And as I was walking along, I noticed somebody looking at me, and a lot of people catch my eye as I'm walking along. Well, not catch my eye, but I realised that they look and then they look away, because, you know, I'm like 6 foot tall. And what I've realised in the last sort of 6 months or so is that they're thinking, wow, she's a really tall woman. Whereas I used to be thinking, they think I'm a freak. But I've come to realise through various things that happened to me that that's not how people see me anymore. Anyway, I was walking through Granger Market, and I noticed this person just held their gaze on me as I was walking past. I was thinking, that's weird. And I was like, I got my skirt tucked into my knickers or something, you know, and I was like thinking maybe I smudged my eyeliner or something. No, everything seemed to be fine. And then there was somebody else did it. And then somebody else did it. And it happened 5 times. And about the 4th time, I realized that they were all men doing it, looking me up and down. And I was thinking, oh, so this is what it feels like to be objectified. Again, had no experience of that whatsoever. So I went home, and again, I sent a picture of myself in the mirror to Deb, and I said, is this, am I, is this skirt too short, or, what, because I never experienced this before. And she just sent a message back saying, you wear what the hell you like to wear and don't mind what anybody says. I was like, absolutely. Except, yeah, it was a strangely unnerving experience, I have to say. And by the time I realized what was going on, which was on the fourth occasion, I thought, the first time, when I first realized, I thought it was quite flattering. And then when it happened again, and when it happens now, it makes me feel, what's the word? Sullied in some way, like I'm there just for their gratification and not as a real person. And again, it was the whole idea of being objectified was something that I understood was an issue, but I don't think unless you've actually, and it's not like it happens to me a lot, right? But when it did happen, you suddenly see a completely different side to it, and that was a really, really strange thing. In terms of my experience in the workplace as a woman, I have to say, I can see it has given me a perspective on how difficult it is for women to progress, particularly in private practice, in law firms. I can definitely, and I know that the legal sector has made massive strides forward, so I'm not going to criticise too openly, but there is clearly still an issue around choosing between having family, and progressing, because it is ultimately still about chargeable hours and billing and all the rest of it. And if you've got to get away to pick up children from after school care and all that sort of stuff, how basically do you compete with your peers who don't have to do that? And I suppose in my case, obviously this was pre-transition, but in a sense, I did do that mum sort of role. My ex was very career oriented, and she's extraordinarily good at her job, and she's made tremendous strides. So 9 times out of 10, it would be me picking the boys up from school, and me doing nativity plays, sports days, emergency runs to the dentist. My youngest, in his first 2 weeks at primary school in reception, had 12 bump notes and knocked a tooth out. I had to deal with all of those. And so I had a visit to the GP and a visit to the dentist in his first 2 weeks at school. But I loved doing it, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. But I think that's something that hasn't changed through transition. I've always had that perspective, because I kind of performed that mum role in a sense, because my ex would be in court and she could get away. I mean, that was her job. You can't really say in the middle of a trial, I have to go because I've got to go and pick up my son from school and take him to the dentist. That doesn't really work. There's about 100 people who are all depending upon you, especially now, given the work she does now. So that balancing act it sounds anodyne to say it, but it is, I mean, in a private practice sense, you are kind of in competition with your peers, because not everybody can get to partnership. And I think what I realized was, I can't cope with being told what to do at the best of times, right? So really, why am I doing this? Why do I care about it? Why do I care about what people think about me? Or why am I trying to get to the top of this slippery pole? Why don't I just do the stuff that I'm good at, which is meeting people, talking to people, working out what they need, and helping them fix it, you know. And then I met Deb, and she felt exactly the same. And we just thought, well, we'll do this together and we'll see where we go. And that was 2010, 2009, 2010. And yeah, we haven't looked back since. So I do understand that I have longer experience of. I don't think it's quite such an issue in the work that I do now, but I can see how it would be, how tough it would be. Because if it's bad enough as a private practice lawyer, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be a founder of a tech business and to raise a family at the same time. I mean, having run my own business, and it wasn't even a big business, you know, the biggest it got was I had 6 people that worked for me. That was all encompassing right there. So to run a scaling tech business would have been, wow. I don't think I could. I just don't think that I could have done it. I just don't think I could have done it. And you know, done the school run and bath time and, you know, sorting out tea for the boys and bedtime stories and all that stuff that you don't want to miss. But then when do you do all the other stuff? You know, there's only 24 hours in the day, and you know, about a third of that you've got to spend looking after yourself and sleeping. I don't regret anything that I have done career-wise, other than the fact that I had the chance to do the entrance exams back in the day. You used to have to do entrance exams to get into Oxford and Cambridge, and I had the chance to do that, but that would have meant coming back. I was on my year out here, coming back to England, and taking them, and I regret not doing that because I regret not challenging myself. But again, I think that might be another dysphoria thing, which is to say that I was always hiding away. Didn't want to expose myself too much because I was not comfortable with who I was as a person. And what I found is, since I transitioned, I can talk to anybody about anything. Whereas before I couldn't network at events. I used to have to wait to be introduced to people, which I know you guys are going to think is ridiculous because you've known me for years, but I just couldn't start a conversation with anybody. And then something happened to me after I came out. And particularly after I realized that the bolder I was, the more people would accept me and the less likely I would be to be misgendered, that I just found I could talk to anybody about anything. The funny thing is that I know a lot of women struggle with that inner steel, that self-confidence. But for me, transition has made a huge difference to my confidence. That's the only responsibility that you have is to represent yourself and be yourself, and that you matter, you are valid. You don't have to pretend to be anything to anybody. If the world won't accept you for who you are, then it's the world's problem, it's not yours. It took me decades to learn was that to have the confidence to be whoever you want to be. And I know, you know, when we grow up, you know, we might want to be like fashion designers or astronauts or play football for England or do whatever, right? That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person that you are inside that spacesuit, or, you know, behind that cutting table, or whatever it happens to be. The person that you are matters, and you will find that people need you for who you are. And if you haven't found those people yet, the only thing that's wrong is maybe you're not looking in the right places, perhaps. It's only when you have that inner confidence in who you are that you can become really settled in what you do, I think. And I think that people see that through the work that you do and the way that you carry yourself in doing that work. Except for those people who, do the mansplaining, but